You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
Och Hjelmin har Knuckles Schwarzenegger!
Ya lo hace, pierna derecha, directo al arco, golazo, 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 golazo.
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
It's Friday in all its glory today. Kevin, how you doing?
I am doing pretty good. I missed the intro yesterday. I missed the sweet sound of our intro feller. And now, we're here. We're back. And it's Friday, so I thank Grant once again.
Thank you, Grant, for your beautiful bounty of Fridays. Kevin, right now we're gonna discuss the NWSL championship game, which goes on Sunday between the Western New York Flash and the Washington Spirit, with Beau Dure, our friend, former of USA Today, freelance writer for The Guardian and many other places right now. He had just joined me yesterday to preview that game, which, as I said, goes Sunday. So we'll have that in a minute. But what I was doing,
we rarely do this, but I just want to give my thoughts, and hopefully everybody's safe. I know a lot of people down south in Florida, in the Carolinas, and everywhere in between on the East Coast. So hopefully everybody's safe with Matthew today. Unfortunately, in Haiti, the death toll is rising, and in the Caribbean, it's very unfortunate and very sad situation with that Hurricane Matthew. So hopefully everyone that we know, collaborators of the show on the East Coast, please, everybody, stay safe.
Well, precisely. And look, there's some really irresponsible messaging going on out there, politically motivated, and I'm not trying to get political here. Listen to the governor of Florida when he tells you to get to hell out of the hurricane zone today,
yeah.
And it's not a conspiracy against, to support global warming or something.
And
folks.
Listen to the feller on the Weather Channel. He was serious when he was saying, get out of your home, get out. You will not be safe. This is the biggest hurricane they have ever seen at the Weather Channel. So it's almost the biggest one in recorded history. So no, they have to evacuate Category 4, and it's actually gaining strength as we speak. It's get out of there.
Exactly.
If you're listening to us there, just stop and go somewhere safe, please.
Yeah, find Wi-Fi in where you're going, but I'm kidding. Just get out. Just get out. Get in the car and go. You can listen to us on demand down the line. Kevin, all right. On that note, let's bring Beau on the line now. Take a quick little bumper. Bring Beau on the line and talk. Well, he'll discuss the NWSL final, and then Kevin and I will come back and we'll have a little bit of a chat about Canada's glorious 4-0 victory yesterday.
We won. We're going to Qatar.
Tourist visa.
You are listening to SPN Radio, powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
And welcome back to Soccer Today. I'm Duane Rollins. Joining me on the line is the freelance journalist for The Guardian and various other places, Beau Dure. He's been on the show before. You know him well. Thanks again for taking some time today, Beau.
No problem. Good to be here.
And the reason we're having Beau is because it is NWSL final weekend in Houston. The Western New York Flash taking on the Washington Spirit for the championship of that. A bit of an upset, especially on the one side. Did you anticipate this matchup at all in any way prior to the season starting for a final, for a championship, Beau?
I did not. And I still don't know what to make of Western because they quite honestly, they got into the playoffs in the first place because they had a friendlier schedule than the Seattle Reign did. They played Boston 4 times. Seattle had to play Portland 4 times. And that surely made a difference between them and the standings. And so I may have mentally just sort of written off Western for that reason, or thought that, they're young. And so I think the thinking for a lot of people was that, well, they're a year or two away. And, they pulled off a big result. And yes, Portland had a baffling performance in a lot of respects, and yes, the officiating could have been better, but the bottom line is Western New York put 4 goals in the net, and it was a very impressive performance.
No, absolutely. And as you said, a younger team in Western New York, and let's turn our attention to them to start with. Obviously, Washington's a team you know very well, and we'll get to them in a moment. But a younger team, as you said, an upset team here. Do you think maybe having that bit of youth on their side, considering it's such an end of a tiring stretch for a lot of the top women that play in this league with the Olympics and with just sort of the mental toll that's gone over in the last 2 years, do you think maybe that youthful exuberance might have been something that helped turn the tide?
It could be, because there were some players for Portland's team who had been through the ringer at the Olympics and so forth. And so, sure, maybe there was a little bit of fatigue on that end, although I really thought the most surprising part for Portland was the defense. And, I did not expect them to. They left the Golden Boot winner, and now we know MVP winner, Lynn Williams, far too much space in the box, and they were lucky that she missed a couple of chances in regulation, and then in extra time she didn't miss at all. So, yeah, there could have been a little bit of that to it, but I think with youth, you just get that sort of scrappy underdog enthusiasm, and it's the sort of thing that thrives on. He built good teams in Philadelphia in WPS, and loved to take down the big money teams because that was not a salary cap league. He was outspent by a couple of clubs, ironically, including Western New York, and still have put together a good scrappy underdog team. And so I think that enthusiasm really carried them through that game. And also, they had nothing to lose in there. You could tell that Portland was feeling the pressure. 20,000 fans expected to win, and perhaps they didn't respond as well as they could have.
Yeah, let's briefly turn our attention to the losers there. Do you think that, no league is going to admit that a team that they'd like to see in there, but considering the success that they've had off the pitch, do you think there are a few people in the head offices of NWSL that are a little bit shaking their head and a little sad that the upset happened?
Well, I think it's a little easier to market a final when you have, Christine Sinclair and Tobin Heath in it than it is when you have Western New York. Now, Western New York has just, of course, they've sort of prided themselves on, oh yeah, we don't have national team players because we weren't allocated the players. Well, really, it's decisions that the club made along the way. But now they do, because today's national team call-ups include a few Western New York players, because they're good young players. And so yeah, they don't have the profile of, Heath and Sinclair, at least not yet. Maybe 4 years from now, we look at Lynn Williams as a star, that we look at Alex Morgan as a star today. But, time will tell. We'll see how people translate their club form into national team form. And for this year's marketing, though, I think you look at Western New York and go, well, they have the Golden Boot winner and MVP winner, and you haven't heard of her yet, but trust us, she's good.
Fair enough. Do you think that NWSL is still a pretty young league, and there's not as big a gap between have and have-nots as you might see in more established leagues? But as it does get that way, do you think that might be the model that small markets use, that they go after these young players that are a little hungrier maybe and maybe less often away and try and use that to build success off? Is that a model for small markets like Rochester?
I don't know if it had as much to do with that as it did just unique circumstances of Wambach, and then they didn't. They had Carly Lloyd, then they didn't. And this made sense as a rebuilding year. It's just gone extraordinarily well, and much faster than I think anybody would have anticipated.
All right, you mentioned the one player, the Williams there, but name some of the other that you might discover on this championship game when you tune in.
Samantha Mewis is a midfield dynamo who has a little bit of national team past and will certainly have a national team future. She's a lot of fun to watch, and midfielder has more goals than assists this year, but she's certainly capable of doing both. And they have Jaylene Hinkle, who I was a little bit surprised was not called to the national team this time, but a very capable outside back. And then also up front, they have Jessica McDonald, who is not one of the youngsters. She's a relative veteran on this team that doesn't have many others. They have the oldest one I think they have is McCall Zerboni, who is kind of a midfield enforcer type. And then they have McDonald, who just has veteran leadership and also has perhaps a rated weapon that will annoy the purists, which is a long throw-in. And that wreaked havoc on the Portland back line. And it's something that, if you're coaching the Spirit, I think you watch that game and think, okay, we're going to spend more defending long throw-ins in practice this week than we ever have before. So, and then other young talents, Mackenzie from out of Virginia is just a good spark plug player and has a bright future ahead of her as well.
All right, let's turn our attention to Washington, who I think it's fair to say is the favorite in this game. Talk to us about what the key to their success to getting to this final was.
Depth. I mean, they lost players for the Olympics and just plugged them right in to the point where a player you and I know fairly well and have talked a good bit about, Diana Matheson, comes back from the Olympics and has trouble claiming a spot in the starting 11. In fact, she came off the bench in the semifinal, as did Katie Stengel, well-regarded forward who was part of a Bundesliga champion. And Shalina Zadorsky, the Canadian center back, was not necessarily had a tough time winning her spot back, and Stephanie Labe has not. Kelsey Weiss is still starting ahead of her. So that's how much depth this team has, and they have it's to the point where we have no idea who could start on the back four going into the final. It's a pretty safe bet Ali Krieger will be there. You'd think. The other three we don't know. They could change left back. They could change both center backs. It's hard to say. They can also have some interplay up front. I mean, the lineup they started against Chicago was one of the fastest starting trios you'll see with Estefania Benini, Crystal Dunn, of course, last year's MVP, and Franny Ortega, who scored the winner against Chicago. They're a handful for anyone to deal with. So it's a good mix of experience and a little bit of youth. And Jim Gabara came into this team saying that he didn't want to change too much that Mark Parsons had built, and he really didn't. But he has managed to get a few young players into the mix here and there. A couple of second-year players in particular have joined the mix. And then they have a very experienced midfield with Joanna Lohman, who's experienced a career renaissance in her mid-30s, Christine Nairn, and then Tori Huster, who is an original Spirit player and has just still a fan favorite for the effort that she's brought for all these years. So it's a good mix of players. And again, you could switch some people around and still have a very good team.
If you look at the history of the NWSL, short as it may be, although now historically long for a modern women's league, the Spirit did sort of start on the bottom in terms of their success early on, and they managed to turn it around. Has this just been good management, good coaching? What has allowed the Spirit to rise themselves up to the top of this league?
They started out as a very young team, and it's hard to say why that is. There were a few factors that went into it, but they just figured, well, we can go into it with a young group. And there were some people that they missed out on perhaps that first season. And then they managed to attract some veterans to come play for them. And I think part of it is that, when salary isn't a big difference, because if you're not on the national teams, you're not making a ton of money anyway. So it's not as if, someone's offering me $5 million and someone else is only offering me $2 million. This is not the sort of decision that you see people make in the NFL or the NBA or the NHL. A lot of it had to do with the facility is very nice. If you prefer grass to turf, then Washington's where you want to be, because they have a beautiful grass stadium field and tons of great grass practice fields. And so the facility is a selling point. And that helps. I think Mark Parsons, a very young coach, also did a good job of building the team he wanted, and he realized that he had to have experienced players come in. It would have been interesting to see a Portland-Washington final, because you would have had two teams that were essentially both built by Mark Parsons and playing a very fluid possession style. And I think that really, it worked well. He got the right people for it, and Gabara kept those people and kept that style for the most part. And I think it's been a good, stable place, and it's one of those places where Portland, I think, just has that cauldron of pressure. I mean, the first season they were pretty successful, and then Cindy Parlow-Cone did not return as coach, and I mean, it's just they expect the world in Portland, and in Washington, particularly after the first season, the expectations have just not been that high, and so they've been able to develop without that. Without feeling like every game's a must-win, or they have to do it for their 20,000 fans and so forth. So I think it's just been, they have sturdy attendance without having any sort of unrealistic fan base.
Let's turn our attention to the game itself that takes place in Houston. What are you hearing in terms of ticket sales down there? How well attended? How much attention is it getting?
Well, what I hear is good, but you'd expect them to say that. It seemed to be doing well even before the matchup was announced. I don't know if the matchup itself will have any effect on things. Perhaps more fans would have traveled from Portland than will travel from Rochester, so that could be a little bit of a drawback. But I think it'll be a nice event. I think it's going. I think it'll do pretty well.
You're kind of in a unique position in that you were around in the early days of Major League Soccer and wrote a book about it, in fact, and you've been around throughout the early days of this league as well. So how would you rate where NWSL is right now if you sort of think back and compare it to the equal time in Major League Soccer's history?
Well, let's see. By year 4 of Major League Soccer, they had expanded, but they were not doing all that well. In fact, year 4 was when they changed commissioners. That's when Don Garber came in. And so things changed from there, although not immediately. And of course, the thing that you hope that that MLS had to deal with, that NWSL you hope does not, was of course a terrorist attack and a financial crash in year 6, because that was that's when MLS came close to folding. They were already kind of shaky, and then September 11th happened. The economy ran aground. And that was when they really had to make the effort to decide, okay, we need to do this, this, and this to stay afloat. Hopefully it won't come to that with the NWSL. It seems like the business plan is working pretty well. And now their players could probably make a few reasonable demands to enhance things a little bit here and there. And I think that they're going to be in pretty good shape going forward. They seem to be taking the MLS slow growth model, and you see Jeff Plush has been doing the media conference down in Houston today, and has been sort of giving non-committal answers on expansion, which may be sort of boring to some of us, but it made sense. He's not going to go out in any sort of irrational exuberance and start plopping teams down where they're not going to succeed. And I think it's a good model. And of course, then we have MLS clubs also getting interested. And, we have a couple that have already done pretty well. Portland obviously is a big one. Orlando did very well in the gate at its first season. Houston is a solid club. And, how many more of those will we see? So it's tough to compare in that sense, because there's no partnership like that you can look at in MLS history. MLS was very much on its own. The NWSL can draw upon MLS, and both in terms of just sharing resources and knowledge and how the leagues get to that point, but also more literally sharing infrastructure in various clubs.
Fair enough. Before I get your prediction on this game, I did want to turn my attention to the U.S. Women's National Team call-up, which came out today. The roster was announced as expected. It was pretty young. I should ask you that. Was that expected? And is it the right way to go?
I think so. I think I think we've long wanted to see the U.S. women's national team behave as other national teams do, where it's nobody's birthright to be on this team. And the U.S. men, when they play a friendly, their call-ups can be almost random at times. I mean, it's okay, which 3 of the 7 people you're considering for goalkeeper are going to come in. And sometimes they're calling in people from Europe because it makes sense for the travel. Sometimes they're not calling in anyone from Europe, and it's an all MLS roster. And they have good, healthy competition for spots. And we really haven't seen that on the women's team. Now, I was a little bit surprised that they had this many players. I think they said 11 uncapped. That's quite a lot. And there were a couple of players who have only been capped a few times, like Jaylene Hinkle, we mentioned before, and Stephanie McCaffrey, who were not called in. And then of the veteran players, it was just almost half of them in, half of them not. I thought I detected a pattern at one point. It looked like they kept Carly Lloyd as sort of the elder of the team, and Becky Sauerbrunn, also leader on the team. They sort of kept them, and then sort of cut out the middle people, the people with fewer than 50 caps. But no, I'm sorry. They kept the people with less than 50 caps, but then the people between 50 and 150 they'd cut out. But then there were some things that just weren't explained by that. And to me, the biggest surprise is Julie Johnston, the center back, is not going to be there. But perhaps she just wanted to have one of her center back leaders in Becky Sauerbrunn and not the other. And then wanted to see how Sauerbrunn plays with every other player they've called in.
Fair enough. All right. We do thank you for your time, but we would be remiss if we didn't ask you for your insight on how this game is going to play out on Sunday. Who do you think will be standing in the confetti when it's all said and done?
I know 2-1 is the sort of the default score that everyone predicts. I remember running a prediction contest once. It seemed like every score prediction was 2-1. But I'm going to say 2-1. I don't think it's going to be a shootout. I think that Washington controls the ball too well for that. I do think Western New York is going to score. I do think Washington's going to score. So I'm going to say the 2 goes to Washington. All
right, fair enough. Beau, anything you want to support point us to before we say goodbye?
At this point, I think it's just going to be an interesting time to watch what's going forward with the national team. And I think one thing, and I have to confess, I've been trying to report on this and not getting anywhere, is that we still have the labor negotiations for the U.S. hanging over their heads. And it was interesting that Whitney Engen, one of those sort of middle tier players who had a lot of caps, announced that she had been told by Jill Ellis she was not going to be called in anymore. And I found it sort of curious because we don't know what the Nets labor deal is going to look like. And in particular, is it going to have these guaranteed contracts that have given stability to people on the women's national team, but perhaps in some cases too much? And so it's interesting to see Jill Ellis doing what she's doing now when we really don't know. I mean, at some point, they're still playing under a memorandum of understanding that U.S. Soccer claims is also a collective bargaining agreement. But there's been some debate over when that runs out. It'll certainly be over by the end of the year, and that's pretty close.
Yeah, interesting times ahead on that front for sure, and a story that we hope resolution is found that's fair for all involved. Beau, thanks again for your time. We'll touch base down the line.
Thanks a lot.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
And welcome back. Thanks again to Beau. If you're looking for that NWSL final, it is at 5 p.m. on Sunday. Again, the Western New York Flash versus the Washington Spirit. Canadian content on both those teams. The TV situation, it's been on YouTube all year. I suspect that I know it's on Fox Sports 1 in the States right now. I'm not entirely sure how you can watch it up here. However, if it's on Fox Sports 1, there's probably a way.
Yeah,
so
there's probably a way to watch it. Absolutely.
So there you go.
Speaking of victories and big game, it was yesterday for Canada, the beginning of a new era, Duane. The Finley era. Undefeated Michael Finley as a 1,000% record as a coach of Canada.
Sorry, what? That was the start. As I tweeted out at the start of the day, our quest for Qatar or Qatar. Have we ever quite figured out what we're supposed to say with that one yet?
Qatar. Well, it's Qatar, so it's Qatar. Qatar.
Yeah, some people pronounce it Qatar, but anyway, the quest for the place in the Middle East that no one thinks the tournament should have taken place began. It did. I mean, that's jokes aside. Really, as I said many times in the previous cycle, which just ended, which is still going on for most teams that are serious about actually competing at the World Cup. As I said many times then, it was really about building towards 2022, and not a bad way to start. They were playing in the part of the world, North Africa, sort of this part of the climate part of the world that they would be in the 22 World Cup if they made it. And after kind of a shaky first half that included a Daniel Henry penalty that fortunately was saved, Canada came back to win that game, decisively, 4-0. 2 goals by TFC's Tosin Ricketts. Marcus Haber got a goal, and as well as Victoria. Stephen Victoria scored a goal as well.
So 2 goals for Ricketts, Victoria, and Haber. 4 goals for Canada. The debut of Anthony Jackson Hamel with the national team. He is capped. Long overdue, by the way, for Anthony Jackson Hamel. Had some injury problems in the last few years for the timing-wise for him to get into the team and didn't really get a lot of playing time, but now he is getting more with the USL and is getting into a better fit and better form. So he was called and made his debut. So a very interesting a couple of storylines. Of course, it's a friendly in front of basically nobody in Marrakesh.
Literally
Morocco.
no one, yeah.
Literally nobody in Marrakesh, Morocco. I don't even know if they sell tickets. Probably not.
I think if you'd walked into the stadium with the Canadian flag, they probably would have let you sit there. But by and large, I don't believe. I think it was closed door.
Exactly. So we had that. So, at least it's a game. It's a continuation. It's at least the program is not dormant, which is the one thing some fans were afraid of after the Floro dismissal and our renewed contract of Benito Floro, which is
mutual parting of ways.
Yeah, mutual parting of ways. They told him, you're not coming back. So usually that's how it goes.
Exactly. Yeah, no. And that is the key point. I mean, look, Floro's first game after the 8-1 didn't take place till February. The 8-1 game was, I believe, it's coming up the anniversary. It was in October. So there was quite a stretch before they played again. Now, in fairness to them, there was only one international break that they did not play. So there were 2 international breaks they did not play in. Immediately following the 8-1 dismissal, they did get into the third one. So it was relatively soon, but not as immediate as this one. And apparently there are rumors they're going to go to Asia in November to play, which hopefully not the MLS teams if they're still in the playoffs, because that would be one hell of a flight to put in the middle of an MLS playoff season. But nonetheless, that is the suggestion. I've heard Malaysia as a possibility. I've heard Indonesia as a possibility for their opponent in the next set of friendlies. So
even if it's MLS players, Duane, sometimes we all talk about bonding, experiment, and all that. But trip to Asia with a group of players, even though it's probably not going to be, it is not going to be the future coach. Michael Finley has that interim tag, but what he can do with that core of players involve more than you think. Even the French one, you involve everybody. Make a trip down there. It does form a certain identity, a certain core. I know it's the intangibles. We're talking about the X factors here. Sometimes we over talk about those things, but it's still something not to be dismissed. That type of travel, that type of put yourself in a different environment altogether. You travel, you make sure you get a chance to go see the sites while you're down there. It does create a different core energy to that core group of players going forward that will be beneficial for this team on the pitch.
Yeah, sure. You can make that argument. Certainly, it'd be harder to make if you're cheering for Montreal or Toronto, because we know Vancouver won't be there. If you're cheering for Montreal or Toronto and they're in a conference final, it might be in the middle of a conference final, literally in the middle of the conference final. It might be a little more difficult to make that argument at that point.
What if you accommodate players that do play for a Canadian MLS club and other MLS players? Well, you call them up. Well, it's kind of thing that the CSA can do.
Yes, they can. I think that it would be perfectly reasonable if either the Impact or TFC were involved in the Eastern Conference Final at that point, that perhaps it might be okay to bypass those couple players if that were the case. So nonetheless, we move on.
They usually bypass them anyway, so what's going to be the problem?
Well, Jonathan Rosario did finally play. So the greatest disgrace in the history of international football is now done, folks. Jonathan Rosario has been called up, and we can thankfully move on from that. Hopefully, that's where we're coming at. But look, I don't want to overanalyze the 4-0 win. I don't, because I know what it was and I know who they were playing. It's the third time they played, by the way. That's insane. Anyway, but at the same time, if I remember back to the game that Floro first debuted, it was the most dire game I've ever watched in my life. It was also played in a closed-door situation. It also outside of the countries involved. It was in Arizona. They played Denmark, and they lost 1-0. And I remember that being Kyle Becker's international debut for the record. So there you go. And he's still sticking around in the sort of peripherally anyway. Well, he wasn't called up this time. So look. It's better. It's a better progression to score a few goals. Does this mean because they scored 4 goals and Floro wasn't there that oh my God, had he just not been there that they would have qualified? God, no. Because they did score 4 goals in under Floro against teams of that quality, against Belize and Dominica. Those teams, when they played them in the early part of qualifying, they did in fact score. So this is, I think, an equatable team that they played, Kevin, and we kind of just move on and look to Monaco in a couple of days, and in a few minutes as well. You have any final thoughts on that before I segue and talk a little bit about the U17s?
No, go ahead. Big game today against Venezuela. It starts at 11:50 a.m.
Yeah, and there's not much more to say to that. It's win or go home, or draw or go home. In this case, or draw or stay. If so, they win or draw today. Canada will advance as one of the top 2. They can still win the group. In fact, they're in first place in the group right now. That will depend on the German result against the Cameroonians, who are out of the tournament at this point, although they have played both of their games very competitively. It has been so far so good with this U17 group. And again, you don't want to, just like I said, and I cautioned with the Canadian national team, men's national team a minute ago, you don't want to go over the top with this, but I think that there's a lot to like about what they've done so far. If they don't get the result today, I would caution fans of the program to not jump out windows. It's teenage girls, and Venezuela is a decent program that did get the win against Cameroon, that did play the Germans very tough, that did go to the semifinals, finished 4th place in the last version of this tournament. That's just underlining that again. By all accounts, based on form, based on most recent results, Venezuela was probably the favorite to finish second in the group behind the Germans heading into this. So the fact that Canada is in with the chance to advance is something that we should cherish and we should celebrate regardless of the outcome, because ultimately I think that they've shown enough on the technical side. They've shown enough on the competitive drive side that even if they don't get the luck today, I think you can take some solace in how they played in this tournament. And ultimately that's what a U17 event is about. That said, we'd like to win, because let's not kid ourselves. We are crawling so far up our own butts that we're no longer aware that we're full of blank if we don't realize that winning is important at a world level, Kevin.
Yeah, exactly. Let's quickly touch on a few games yesterday in the European qualifiers, Duane. That Iceland-Finland match is quite the match. If you can watch the highlights or the actual full game, especially the extra time, I urge you to do so. Iceland trailed in that game at twice, came back to tie it up, and then pushed for the win in extra time. Iceland 3, Finland 2. Kosovo, Croatia, not even a contest. Croatia 6, Kosovo 0. Italy, Spain, Duane. Italy was trailing 1-0 at home. Their undefeated streak was on the brink. And then penalty called Italy scores its finishes 1-1 in that group. So there's no winner in that game. So the group will be decided further on down the road when those two teams amass points against other. Let's not kid ourselves. Those are the two teams that are going to move on. One of them is going to be qualified directly to Russia 2018. The other one will have to play a playoff game.
And just real quickly on that, the Spain still has not lost a World Cup qualifying game in 2 decades. That is insane. 1993 was the last time Spain lost a World Cup qualifying game. You can comprehend that. We're here in Canada. I can't comprehend that.
We're just trying to win one. They haven't lost one since 1993.
Since I was a young man.
I was 9 years old.
Yeah, I was older than 9. All right. That's since the Blue Jays last won a World Series.
Yeah, exactly. The Habs last won a Stanley Cup.
The Habs last won the Stanley Cup the last time Spain lost a World Cup qualifier.
A year before the World Cup in the United States.
Yeah, before MLS. Like, we could go on.
It's 3 years before
Bill
MLS.
Clinton was president. Now his wife is likely to be one into so many absurdities that you can talk to about this.
Yeah. Well, wow.
Yeah. All right.
But again, other great matches. But today, a couple of great matches as well in the qualifiers. We're in Portugal and Andorra. Portugal have lost their first game in the qualifiers in match day 1. Match day 2, they have Andorra. They should be able to take care of it at home. And Netherlands, Belarus, interesting. But you have France, Bulgaria, Belgium, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Luxembourg, Sweden, and the other big match today, you say Hungary and Switzerland. Hungary qualified for the Euro of 24. Can they qualify for the World Cup? They're on their journey there and going to face Switzerland at home. This game is very important for Hungary. So a lot of important games still. Oh, Greece, Cyprus, kind of a derby there too.
Kind of, yeah. Well, it depends. It is a derby, really, but I don't think it's going to be a very competitive one, although Greece isn't particularly on high form, as we know.
Geographical derby, if there is such a thing.
Yeah, all right. Look, that's... we are going to run a bit of a shorter show today. As I said, that U20 game or U17 game, does start in about 10-15 minutes. So I wanted to watch that. Obviously, there's a baseball game that matters to the local people in Toronto as well.
I'm wondering what's going on. I don't know what's happening. Yeah. Oh yeah, game 2 of the ALDS.
Quick preview of next week. A couple things. Dino Rossi is booked now to give us a State of the League address on League One Ontario. I think that will be interesting to the hardcore development folks out there. We try to get Dino on at the start of every season, at the end of every season. I have since forever. I will actually be working the League One Championship game as part of the crew there. I'm pretty proud to be doing that. That's a week from Saturday, so we do have a full week. I'll give a bit of attention and give you a bit of we'll do a block on it. I think I'll set it up and let people know how to find it, and you can watch that game on the streams on the League One Ontario site. It is FC London against Vaughan Missouri is the championship game. The winner of that will then go on to play the PLSQ winner. Do you know offhand who the PLSQ winner is, Kevin? I'd have to look it up.
I have to look it up. Oh no, it's Montreal. Les Griffons, the CF Montreal with Ferdy Moujan. Their third championship in the PLSQ.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
No, sorry, their second championship, Montreal. Ferdy Moujan's third. The first one was with another team, but so a Griffon of soccer Montreal will be the representative of the PLSQ in the interprovincial cup eventually.
And the dates for that, I tweeted them out a little while ago. I know November 13th is the final day of that competition. So that will wrap up the D3 season here in Canada. And with it, we'll crown a champion. And hopefully it will be the last time we crown a champion that doesn't get an entry into the Voyageurs Cup, because that, I think, is a necessary step in the evolution of the game here to get those teams at least that symbolic entry into the Canadian Championship. I would love to see that happen sooner rather than later, Kevin.
Exactly. This weekend, Duane, the USL playoff, the semifinals of the conferences. You have a great matchup. We talked about it all week. And stay tuned. You have the Red Bulls versus the Rochester Rhinos. You have the Charleston Battery versus Lou City FC with Mark Anthony K. Listen to the show of last Wednesday with Mark Anthony K. WFC2 versus OKC Energy, and OC Blues, who upsetted Sacramento Republic, versus the Swope Park Rangers in Swope Park. So those are your semifinal matchup this weekend in the USL.
The game just keeps ticking. Get out there, support the local game. Get out there we'll get to your living room, support the game, support the Canadian national team, support the Canadian women, support the NWSL, support it all. Just watch it all, and most of all,
God damn it,
Support
just
us.
watch some soccer.
And support us too. Support us.
Support us, Patreon. Sports podcasting. So Patreon, that's patreon.com/sports podcasting network. $1 a show, whatever you like to give or to help us grow more, to help us with our audio situation, to be able to provide a better quality and better time for us to devote to SPN and all in its glory. Your donations go a long way and help us become what you truly need in your life.
All right. Everyone needs SPN. On that note, Kevin,
you need to hear our voice, Duane. It's become a need now. Let's not hide it. Over the last few years, you've listened to us some time, and now it's 5 times a week, and you truly need it. What would you be without us? Probably better, yes, but that's not as fun.
All right. On that note, Kevin, I'm going to go out and buy some Corona. I'm going to put it on the TV. I'm going to watch the women's under-17 play for a half. And
on
I'm going to throw it
TSN.
on TSN, yeah. Then I'm going to throw it on my phone. And then in the second half of that game, I'll watch it on the phone with the Toronto Blue Jays march to victory. 10 more wins to the World Series, folks. Until that time, Kevin, I'll let you, as always, say goodbye.
Monday, 11 a.m. live for Soccer Today. And until then, have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.